Hey, it's Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. Today's the 12th of March, and I guess it's been a while since I made a video. February was a very tough month. This was a hard winter for people like us, livestock people, and we learned a lot about the struggle between life and death. And I have a pile of these responses that came from the Attorney General's office that a lot of you have emailed them and asked questions, just very simple questions, and I've felt every single day a burden to make a video and get this out here because you guys put effort into this and then I seem to have just sat on it. Well, I'm not. I'm thinking about it and I'm trying to figure out the best course of action with these, and I'm not sure that I know. I'm really not. There's some good stuff here, and then we get to places where the answers are extremely evasive. And okay, let's see. I have 15 of them here but only mine and one other guy is that I'm going to talk about because he said use as you wish. All right. Mine was pretty simple. I asked, is the Constitution the supreme law of the land? And this comes from Rusty Hills. This Rusty Hills, he is the senior advisor. This is a very smart man, I'm told, works for the Attorney General, and his job in this case seems to be damage control. All right. I asked, is the U.S. Constitution the supreme law of the land? He quotes a bunch of stuff. He says, Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuant thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. So, in a roundabout way, he's saying, yeah, it is the supreme law of the land. So, if it is supreme, I ask you, nothing supersedes it. And that's a very important piece of information. Nothing supersedes the Constitution of the United States. And this guy's boss took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. See, so that's what we were getting at. My second question was, I asked how the Attorney General intends to fulfill his campaign promise to defend the Constitution. Here's the answer. Mr. Schuette will continue to utilize the Department of Attorney General legal resource to defend the U.S. and the Michigan Constitution as he has done for the past 4 years. Now, all of us out here in TV land, you get a sick feeling when you hear that. Let me get back to that, though. I mean, we don't really buy that because we haven't seen him protect and defend my constitutional rights. But in some of these other ones, Rusty Hill says the Attorney General is not the attorney for individual citizens. Okay. My next one is going to be from a guy by the name of Aaron Esch, and I've gotten to know Aaron through this whole thing. Been to the house several times, and this is what he writes. Mr. Schuette, I was hoping, since you are self-proclaimed constitutional AG, that you must know a whole lot about the Constitution. I hope so because I have a couple questions about it, particularly the Bill of Rights. Let's start with the first one. Does the First Amendment apply everywhere in Michigan, or does it only apply in certain areas? And what this is in reference to is what went on out in Nevada several years ago is they set up what they called First Amendment zones. So you had to be standing in this roped off area in order to speak. Other than that, you weren't allowed to speak. All right, so that's what he's getting at with that. And the answer to that is pretty good. And this comes from Rusty Hills as well. And he says, first you asked whether the First Amendment applies everywhere in Michigan or only in certain areas. Answer, the First Amendment applies everywhere in Michigan. Okay, that's very important for you to know. Tuck that away. All right, second, who is the Second Amendment for? Hunters, the militia, or the people? Next you asked about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is for the citizens of the United States of America. Okay, and that does include hunters, militia, and people, I would reckon. So that's good. Tuck that away. What Aaron asks, what would be an excessive fine under the 8th Amendment? Now here's where the deception begins. You next ask what would be an excessive fine. I cannot answer that question, as it is not the role of the office to determine whether a given fine is excessive. Okay, so he's saying it's not their job to determine whether it's excessive. Really? Really? Okay, I don't buy that, but I'm going to get into that, why these questions are being answered deceptively like this. And then he goes on, under our system of government, it is the legislature's role to establish fines for the violation of criminal and civil laws. Really? Now, why did the Attorney General's office issue a $700,000 fine to me? He's saying right here it wasn't their job, but he's also saying it's the legislator's role to do that. Violations of criminal and civil laws. I didn't either. I didn't violate either a law, criminal or civil. It is the role of the judiciary to impose fines or determine whether an imposed fine is excessive. So again, he's saying, hey, it's not my job. It's not my job. So, okay, evasive, I believe. Okay. Next question. What happens when someone who has sworn an oath to defend the Constitution fails to do so? Is there a penalty for that? What if the person not only fails to uphold his oath of office, but becomes an adversary to the Constitution itself? What is the penalty for that? Is it life in prison or maybe $700,000 fine? Or would that be excessive? That was Aaron's question, and it's a good question because it fleshes this right out. And here's Rusty's response. You next asked a series of questions regarding oaths. It is unclear from your email exactly what kind of oath you are referencing. Really. As indicated earlier, it is the role of the legislator to pass laws and establish penalties for violations of those laws. It is the role of the judicial branch of the government to determine if violations of those laws have occurred and impose an appropriate penalty as provided by law. If you have any questions regarding a particular factual issue, I encourage you to consult a private attorney to determine whether the oath has been violated, and if so, what recourse may be available to you. Thank you again for your inquiry to the Attorney General. Rusty Hills. Okay. And the rest of these are kind of like that. There's some good stuff that came out of it, and I'm going to be sharing that at a meeting this weekend. I think the major thing is the Constitution the supreme law of the land? And the answer is yes, they had to admit it. They had to admit it. Because if they said no, then the next question would be, well, what is it? Okay. Now, all you sheepdogs out there that took up your pen and did this, I'm going to encourage you to give follow-on questions, because what you've done is you have engaged in dialogue at one of the higher levels of government here, and you've got their attention. Now, these answers may not prove anything right now, but this is a long game. They're going to be very, very helpful later. And I just want to share a follow-up letter from Aaron, and kind of talk about that a little bit and follow up this, finish up this video. Hey Mark, finally a response to my email to the AG. The most interesting response that it says that my email is unclear as to what kind of oath I am referring to, but my email says clearly, what happens when someone who has sworn an oath to defend the Constitution fails to do so? That's a direct quote out of Aaron's original question. Another interesting part of the letter states that it's the legislature's role to establish fines. My follow-up question would be, if that's so, then why are agencies like the DNR establishing and enforcing fines like this? And further, why is the AG enforcing them if it is an invalid fine? What does the AG enforce fines? No, why does the AG enforce fines that are not established by the legislator? Okay, and then he writes, and this is the point I want to make. Aaron says, use this as you wish. and I know where he's coming from. He says, Mark, I realize doing this will put me and my family squarely in the crosshairs. The AG of the AG, but I think it is worthwhile to press these questions in order to effect real change. I don't want my children to have to fight this battle. So now is the time to take up the fight. It cannot wait. Having said that, I think it would be prudent for a few sheepdogs to gather together and form a sacred bond like was formed during the Declaration of Independence. If we commit to have each other's backs, then none of us will be left to hang alone. In the words of Benjamin Franklin, we must all hang together, or assuredly we will hang separately. Feel free to pass any of this however you wish. I think those words have a lot of, there's a lot said there, that is how this citizen feels about his state government. And I am sad to say that I feel the same way. We've felt quite a bit of pressure from this office that exclaims continuously that they are defenders of the Constitution, but then violate it just as quickly as they can. Now, why is this happening? Right? Because there's a lot of frustration. I know, I'm very frustrated. We think that the people that we've elected to office are like us, that they just want to live their lives and, you know, prosper and do the best they can, but that's not true. These people are not like us. I believe, and I don't know as I can prove this in a court of law, but I believe that you either serve one of two things. Life and death are all around us, all right? But by your actions, you serve one or the other, all right? The type of farming that I am in, I am choosing to serve life. We propagate all life on our farm, and it takes care of us. So life takes care of life. Life prevails. Life prevails. Industrial agriculture, on the other hand, which is really who Schuette is running cover for. I mean, he comes from the Dow fortune. Industrial agriculture promotes death. And I mean, they would argue that because they'd say, well, look at all the food we produce. But really what they do is they kill everything but what they are going to prostitute for profit. They kill everything else by use of chemicals in the soils and stuff like that. A handful of soil has more organisms in it than we have people in the world, right? And by using these chemicals, they kill all of that bacterial life. So I think what we have to remember is those of us that serve life believe in truth, justice, and the American way. And when people that we've elected to office seem to not support that, we scratch our head and say, well, they must just be looking at this the wrong way. We've got to get them informed. And we think it's going to be a simple thing to inform them, but that's not true. These people serve death, and we see this in our state government quite a bit. And I don't know what the answer is there. I really don't know, but I know that life always prevails. So I don't want to go too long. It's Mark from Baker's Green Acres. I'll follow up in a minute.